welcome to Freebird Spirit YouTube channel and the discussions, wisdom behind the awakenings. And I feel like is this
number 10?
This is our 10th one. Okay, so this is kind of a big deal.
How the time flies.
So the 10th discussion. Thank you for joining. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the family out there for joining in on this conversation. It's been just amazing and very connective. I feel very connected in them, especially, you hear that feedback and other stories and like that. It's just like we are connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talked about that one book. We talked about this one before, which of course I think is just an incredible book.
Between Two Kingdoms.
Yes, and this is her name, Suleika Jawad, which is always
Suleika Jawad
in how our education system works. Anyway, now I've lost what I was going to say. So, because she has a blog called The Isolation Journals. And so she sent it out this week, and it was very much about what we've been talking about. Only what she's doing is not having conversations. She's inviting people to write. So some people are writing back and forth, and it's really powerful stuff. It's just really, and it's not always related to the issues that we've talked about, but it's about people sort of trying to survive it. She's telling the story about what it means to be in treatment for the leukemia she has. And she's also on a list for foster dogs. So she took in a foster dog. And remember, I told you John Baptiste is her partner.
Yeah.
Right.
And she just lost her dog, right?
Did she?
I think that she had just lost her companion, the dog that was with her.
Oh, wait, on the trip, that
Mm-hmm.
one? Yeah, she's got another one. So they had two. So but the fun story is that it's a little tiny dog that she was fostering. And you remember her partner is John Baptiste. So he's sitting at the piano preparing for the symphony he just wrote. And he's got this dog in his lap, and the two of them are singing together.
Oh.
And when you read it, and she's in the background, sort of, videotaping them and talking about what it does to her spirits, and that he calls her and he says, "Should we keep her?" And she said, "No, I can't do it when I'm under treatment like this." So, those are those moments, we've talked about those moments. Yeah. And then the question that came up for me when I was reading that was really a question for you. Okay, so so family, I'm about to do to her what she does to me on a regular basis. So you told us the story about Ben, but you didn't tell us how you recovered. So what came next, and how did you get through that?
Yeah, what does recovery, or I feel like there's a better word for that, because you never recover, right? But how do you pull yourself from the shadows of a loss like that?
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely was a lot of trench work. And what I mean by that is, when, let's say you go, if you've ever been to like sand dunes, or if you've ever been in like a hole and you're trying to get out, and you've seen this and people try to get out. Well, the more you try to get yourself out and kind of maybe ignore that you're in the trench, or try to ignore moving through on the natural timeline of healing, or grieving, or however you want to any word you want to put in there, the more dirt falls down on you and you fall back down, right? And so it's just like, I kind of see it like that. So there's so much learning and growing that happens and awakening in that grief, in the shadows. The shadows are so important, and it's all connected.
What do you mean by shadows?
So the shadow part of stuff, it's like, I guess the only thing I think of is like, kind of the darkness of it, or the I don't know, it's the grief, the shadow is
So
the
it's like
depth of the grief.
it's not the body, but it's the sort of
It's
reflection.
just it's everything. It's the shadows. It's not the light side of it. It's the shadows. It's the
I hear
shadow part of healing, yeah, of the grief. And so, but good question. You know, the first thing is the stages of grief. Those are real. Like you really do, you can sit in that whole the depth of each one of those. The anger comes, spurts of anger, and the depths of sadness. And I think that I really went back and forth between those two, the sad and the anger, the sad and the anger. And so just you're literally just trying to take care of the symptoms. Like you're not getting down into the depths. So you're just trying to stay above the water. You're just trying to take care of the symptoms of anger and sadness. And so what do you do when you're super angry? Or what do you do when you're super sad and you just want to make it go away? So you do stuff like, well, you get mad, you hit walls, or you cry, or you try to numb it a certain way. So you start binge watching TV or something just to get your head to go away, those types of things. So trying to avoid the pain as much as possible, like that. I feel like I always feel like I didn't do grief well, because it was just so hard, and it is hard. I also feel like sometimes I don't learn as quickly as others, so I tend to stay in it a little longer, in the depths of it. But something that keeps coming in my mind, and I'm just going to bring it up because it keeps popping in. Is others in your life that are coming alongside you to try to help you during this time. Super important. That's a tough job. Right? For people to come alongside people who are grieving like that.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to them. But there's one thing that keeps coming to my mind, and I feel like I heard it a lot, and it was like, you're going to see him again in heaven. You're going to be reunited.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I mean, I understand the gesture and the loving kindness behind that. I will get to see him. Yeah, that's totally cool. But it will never be the same. It will never be like it is. Because when I see him again, yeah, it's going to be his soul, and he may present himself like Ben to me, so I recognize him, right when the soul to soul, but but literally, in the soul families or whatever, we've been all different types of people in all different types of times, and you know what I mean? It's not going to be
No,
That time with him is gone. I don't get that time anymore.
no.
And that's what I'm grieving. And yes, I get to see him, but it won't be the same.
Right. That's right.
And so that that just always was something to me.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing that I had to maneuver through.
So how did you do that?
Yeah. How did I do that? How did I do that?
I noticed that she's laughing, but she's really not laughing. Yes.
How did I do that? I wrote a lot. I painted.
Mm.
I did a lot of alone time. You know, and I surrounded myself with people who allowed me just to be. If I wanted to say fuck brain tumors and drink some whiskey, they'd be like, yeah, let's drink whiskey and say fuck brain tumors right now. You know what I mean? So they joined in on my journey of grief with me. So I didn't have to do it alone. That was super important. And telling stories, remembering the stories of Ben, keeping him present, and those types of things helped maneuver through. My daughter was significant. Her voice was significant in my healing as well. She did grief and healing much better than I did. Much healthier, I think. She had a greater understanding of him being alive, more alive than he was when he was here. She had a better understanding. To me, he's not here, he's gone, and that's all I know that he's alive somewhere else, but she was able to connect into that awareness so much quicker than I was. And
what do you attribute that to?
I think she just has she was born more awake than I was.
Well, you've made reference to sleepwalking several times. So
oh yeah, me. Yeah.
Maybe was that a part of the adjustment? I mean, we were talking about awakening, right? Wisdom behind awakening. So somewhere in there, you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? So somewhere in there, there's a huge event, right? A very painful, huge event.
Mm-hmm.
And you had said it was like you were sleepwalking before that.
Right. The Walking Dead. Yep.
Walking Dead. Yeah. Okay. That was
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now I got it right. Okay. So, so his transitioning catapults you out of that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Into what?
Right.
Into grief, into what is life? What is, I mean, you've got,
right. You have to feel, right? Yeah. Oh,
right.
Yeah. I had to feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Walking Dead, like I had learned because of childhood trauma and all the rest of it, that I could be pretty numb. Just in general, I didn't have to drink or do anything. I could be numb. I just was numb. And so pretty much The Walking Dead. And when he passed, when he transitioned, it literally catapulted me into feeling, into awake. I was not dead anymore. I was alive and awake, and I was feeling. And for those of you, what comes to mind is if you fall asleep and you wake up in the middle of what am I saying? When you are having a baby and you may go to sleep and you wake up right in the middle of a contraction, it is severe. So when you can build up to it, it's one thing because you can kind of get through it. But if you kind of doze a little bit between and you wake up in the middle of one, you are not prepared. And it is jolting. So that literally is what happened. That Chrys, that was a good analogy there. So then I had to deal with feelings. I had to feel. And so, so I did go through times of trying to not feel, whether it was running, or if like I said, binge watching or things like that. I could hyper focus on things. So I was just like, okay, I'm putting all myself into this, right? So I'm trying not to feel all this if I'm focused on this, like that. So that was one of
And
my
then
tools.
getting angry when somebody disturbs that.
I would get, my anger would come in when I was some alone times. And I really was thinking of like the pureness of his goneness, how raw and real, and like, what the fuck? Why didn't you take, why am I here? And why did you take him? And, like those types of questions. Why did he have to go? And for those of you who might be just listening to this one and not have listened to his story of passing, I, at the time, was in organized religion and a Christian belief system where, God's in charge and he took him, you know what I mean? So, although I never thought that he took him, I just felt like life was life and that happens. But I did feel, however, that he allowed it to happen. That was where I was just like, you allowed this to happen. So, and I would get so angry, and it would be so rageful. And how do I get this out? And I literally would hit the wall. I would hit walls. And, at any given time, anybody could see my hand. It would be bruised. And to release the anger part. But then, the next day it would be gone. You know what I mean? It didn't stay, but I would get the anger would come in. It just didn't make any sense to me. But you can't make sense of it. It's his story, his journey, that we are connected, and it was just like I was so boxed in that I couldn't think bigger. I couldn't understand bigger. I couldn't see the bigger picture. So over time, in little bits and pieces at a time, and that's why I brought my daughter in, because she would say every once in a while, she would come up with these little gems of words, and that were just perfect for the time, for the moment, that would go. And things like, Mom, why do you keep Ben in the grave?
Oh,
why do you keep him there?
Wow.
And, or like little things. And it was always in the right moment, the right time. And it would just bring me to this awareness. And I'd be like, oh, yeah. So
That's perfect.
It was moments and times and little awakenings upon little awakenings. And I'm, even as hard as that was, it brought me to an awareness of myself, of self. And because I was thrown into being awake and feeling feelings and doing all that, where before I could be the Walking Dead, and I was moving along life and in my little Walking Dead self. I wasn't allowed that anymore. So then it came all for full circle back to self. And that was a journey unto itself, loving myself and understanding that, and the reality of, oh, I am lovable. Who knew? Who knew that people?
Isn't that funny how that works?
And so, yeah. And so Ben did that for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's so many little bits and pieces along that journey. Hard journey, but good. And you know, to today, good, hard journey. You know, I still want Ben to be here. There's still always moments.
Yeah.
But he always reminds me, I am here. And I'm like, I know you're here, but I want you here. You know, so we still have that argument. But
well, it's a difference, right, in terms of how you feel his energy. You know, the sort of, was I listening to something earlier where people were talking about, oh, yeah, it was a moment I was watching television for a few minutes. And the comment was, don't you just love it when you have babies? They smell so good. Right?
yeah.
So there's something about the physical connection.
Yes.
The way in which Ben had a scent, had a an energy. You were looking in his eyes. You were feeling him, hugging him. You know, that's so much. You know, we came with this package, right? This, what we called the vessel one other times. We came with this package, and it operated in a certain kind of way, but it was really why we came, right? We came into human form for a reason, and these are the things that were given to us, not because we chose them, so to speak, but because this is what life is. You know, and not just us, but other people I talk to, these big events happen, but they happen and catapult you to a whole other place. I was reminded when I was in my 20s, I was anorexic, and I was not awake, and sort of walking through life thinking I was handling it, and I wasn't. And I went through a very difficult breakup, and moved to a place, and then was trying to sort of, this is when I had that feminist bookstore. At that same moment, decided, you know, and of course I was like, I planted an enormous garden, I did all this stuff, and in the middle of all that, I was painting a house. You know, nothing could stop me. I rewired a truck, I painted a house, and you know, I was doing everything, gardening, the whole 9 yards. So I'm at the top of the ladder, and a spider flew into my face, and at that moment in my history, I was terrified of them. And I backed up, and I went to reach for the rung below me, and it was gone. And I went straight down and telescoped myself into my arm, right? So I essentially crushed my arm. I shattered every bone in my hand, broke my elbow, broke off the side of my elbow, ended up with pins and screws, and was in the hospital for a week, and out of work for 6 months. And, you know, there was some permanent damage, but nothing that's extraordinary. I had a great doctor, but it was a moment, because when I came out of that, this is going to sound funny, but my mom used to bleach my hair blonde because I was a blonde kid. So she wanted me to stay blonde. And so I stopped bleaching my hair. I started therapy. I dealt with the physical abuse I'd had as a kid, and changed my diet completely and became healthy, went back to school, and here I am. So it was a really horrible moment and extraordinary pain and confusing and what's happening to me and all of that. And you're young, you're in your 20s, right? So you're like, what is this? What's going on here? And that was the moment. That's an awakening moment. But using this thing we've got as the place to create that level of awakening. So when you were telling the story of Ben, that's what I'm feeling is this is, you can almost see him just living his life and doing what he did and being physical and watching him and absorbing him and getting his scent and hearing his voice, and seeing his eyes and, feeding him food and all of that, that is so much a part of what it means to be here. And you can't sort of talk it away by saying, yes, but I'm always connected to spirit. It doesn't work.
No.
Because, the spirit came into that form. So
and it's such a beautiful gift for this human experience is what you just described, that smelling and the smelling of a person and the touching and the feet, that just the emotions that we get to share with each other is such a gift. That's that's one of our gifts of this human experience. And that's also one of the griefs when someone transitions on, is that we're not going to get to experience exactly that with them again. But I also, your experience of that of that awakening, and the ability to see the positive outcome later on. But you had to go through some time before you were aware of that, right? So with both of our stories here, there's this time where you're just living it. You're not like able to verbalize, oh, well, blah, 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 and I'm learning this and I'm awakening. No, you're moving through the muck first. And then you can, it's a little bit at a time, the little awakenings at a time, and then to the greater understanding of, so that was that tower.
A part of my journey was having grown up gay and not being able to tell anyone. So, and it was at a time when it was really, really, really negative. And like you, in the sense that my mother was raised by an evangelical minister, this of the old variety, and she was the youngest of 8, so she managed to survive a lot of that, but her older siblings didn't so much. I had to figure out how to be who I am. And I think partly what you've described about sort of sleepwalking, you find yourself, and we've talked about this before, we've talked about you put one foot in front of the other, right? But here is this kid just trying to sort of get to the next day and sort of figure out who she is, and then realizing that, oh, okay, at one point I said, okay, so I'll be alone for the rest of my life because I can't be somebody I'm not. And going through all of the assaults that go with that. And so by the time I get to the place where that accident happens, I've been denying me all along the way, right? And putting me to sleep and saying, and trying to convince your parents you're okay, but they never quite believe it, and they talk to you about it, and they blame themselves. And so we went through all of that. So when I started therapy after my accident, I remember that one of the things the therapist said to me that was so transformative was, she said, you don't have to explain anything to anybody. I was like, I don't? No. You don't have to explain anything to anybody. You say, I can't come over. You don't have to make an excuse. You say, I'm gay. Oh, well. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to describe it. You don't have to do anything. It was so liberating to get to that place.
I want to pause on that right here, Chrys, because I think this is an important point for the family that's listening as well. The explaining that is trauma-based.
Yeah.
Trauma-based folks, we over explain because it's just been ingrained in us to do that, to protect ourselves on one level or another. So if you find yourself over explaining everything, take a check there and release yourself from that over explaining. If you're late to a party, you're late to a party. You don't have to over explain why or whatever the situation is. But I wanted to pause there because that is a trauma-based
Yeah. And I went through a fair amount of trauma. My mom was a product of her generation, and her father had said, Chrys is too spirited, so you need to break her spirit. And the same thing had happened to her, but I didn't know that till much later. That was only recent that I found that out. But yeah, so you go through those levels of trauma, and then there's what's internalized. So the gay thing comes in contact with the other thing, and the next thing you know, you're not loving yourself. So when you were talking about sleepwalking, that's what it is. We're not loving ourselves when we are explaining why we're late. Why we're explaining anything means we've just given over our power, our ability to love ourselves, to someone else to decide whether you're okay or not. And that's tough stuff, and at this point in my life, I'm still going through that stuff, still trying to say, okay, I'm going to now establish a boundary because I deserve a boundary. But that took a long time. That took 27 years of therapy, so, this is powerful stuff. The grief work is powerful. And I've been talking about it a lot with people lately, for a variety of reasons. I had 2 friends who were killed in a car accident a few weeks ago. And so we're still talking about that stuff. But the grief stuff is, and with the illness piece, I'm thinking about Yvonne. I'm thinking as this was coming through, it was like, you can feel the grief when she's, she's late stage breast cancer and sort of saying, I'm just cherishing every day and I'm still here. And I just turned 56 and I'm so delighted I'm here another year. And I'm now 14 months in remission. So I'm sort of going, and I had the blood test the other day and I'm still in remission. So, it's like, okay, this is all good. And, but the grief work is still there. It's different. It's not what you've described, because how is it different? Yours is about cherishing another human. And mine is about having cherished my life.
Yes.
And somehow we're not allowed to do that. So, if I get up in the morning and I can move the way I used to move, I'm okay. But if I can't move, I'm going straight into grief. I'm going straight in. And that's sort of like, okay, and I go downstairs, I walk down to the basement, and on the shelf is a softball, and I start to grieve. I can't throw the softball. So, it's like, okay. So, and then the life that I had is gone. So in some ways there's similarities, the life you had was gone.
Yes.
In another way, the life you welcomed in is also spectacular, right? So
Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we welcome
I don't
in
know.
and be like, yeah, that I welcome this. I welcome this season. And it's so interesting that we're talking about this, because I feel like I've been reading a lot about the process of aging, and we're all aging. So no matter who's watching, who's watching right now and part of this conversation, you can be 20, but you're still aging. You're still letting go of things. You're still letting go of that season and moving forward. And what does that mean? And literally in the last 2 nights, I've been dreaming a lot lately, but it's been about letting go of watching other people still be able to do things and I'm not able to. And you know, just kind of what you're saying, you see that softball and you're like, there's grief in that. There's letting go. So all levels of grief and letting go and stepping into something that's different and new without that piece in it. So we all have that. So how can we do that? Use it as an awakening without it being super painful, like a big tower coming down on us. You know what I mean? Do we have to go through these huge, painful experiences, or, your body doing things where you can't do the things you used to do anymore? Like for me, it was in my dream, it was all about snow skiing, I think, because we're coming into snow season and everybody can snow ski. And I used to do that all the time. And now I can't. So, and you have to let that go. And it opens up opportunity to do something else, right? But how do we do that? And can we awaken without painful things or letting go, or, does it always?
The one thing that we're dealt with, and that's part of what it means to be here, is we're always given things and having to make a decision about what to do with it, what path to take, right? And we talked about this before, about people saying to me, "Oh, you're so courageous." And it's like, I don't feel like I'm courageous. And you said, yeah, it's not like you signed up for, the military or something.
Yeah.
So for me, it was always, if I don't do it, it'll be worse. But it's such a message to a child. If you don't do this, you're gonna be punished, and something's gonna, that sort of stuff. And so you're also bringing in some of that same energy and having to reframe it. You have to reframe it. But what were we talking about? We were talking about, what does it mean to hear the voice of love? We throw that word around a lot, and we rarely have a conversation about it. When we talk about it, typically when we talk about it, we're talking about things like romance, but we say it all the time, lead with love, love yourself, all of that. What does it mean to hear that voice? What does it mean to have had that significant a loss and still be able to love? What does it mean to be as sick as I have been and still be able to come out and be loving of myself as well as others? So what is that thing? And I was watching this thing the other day about I'm trying not to use the technical stuff, but it's really quantum physics. But that's what I was watching, and it was really about energy, how we really are energy. This is an energy field. 96% of what's around us you can't feel or see or touch. this isn't it, we are all, it's not just connected, we are all one. We're all it, including your desk, your clock, your,
Yeah.
glasses, your chair, everything's energy, including who you are. And so sometimes that becomes sort of an intellectual exercise, but sometimes they're necessary so that you can integrate the idea long enough to be able to feel it. So being able to love, for me to be able to love you, for me to be able to love myself, for me to be able to love other people, love my dog, love life, I have to be able to understand it. I think that's when we were talking earlier about Megan's book, Megan Watterson's book, Mary Magdalene Revealed. Yeah. When we were talking about hers, it's interesting because she's reading the Mary Magdalene Gospel, the translations, and looking at the sort of the politics of all of it. But in there, she's talking about that mind is the eye of the heart. And how do you shift your attention from everything around you to your heart, and listen to your heart and feel your heart. I think I said in one of the other videos, some mornings I wake up and I'm just up my heart, and I can feel my heart, and it's not sick, it's just full of energy, so somehow finding a way. And it's really, and what she says a lot, and of course I thought about this a great deal, but it's about how perspective shapes our views of everything. Perspective. So when you said, Christian community, it's like you get shaped by these cultural structures.
Perspective.
They shape how you think and what you feel and what's real, but they don't always give you the tools to sort of move through the spaces we're describing. And so I found that was really liberating, to sort of think of the heart as your mind, and the eye of the heart as your connection, as the connection between spirit and soul, and that we're all energy. You start to realize that if you can move toward that place, and that's not an easy walk, but if you can move toward that place, you can then move through where you've been and what you've struggled with. I don't know if I said that right, but
you did. And it just reminds me of that. We have to be brave in that. I'm going back to the brave thing, because you have to, the braveness of feeling and knowing and experience. It takes bravery to step into that space of knowing, because then all the perspectives and all the constructs and everything that we've built in regards to keeping ourselves safe, and we've talked about this before with the boxes and so forth, they may be shattered. You know what I mean? Once you get into that space of knowing, and that heart space that you're describing, that love, that knowing. And I know I keep saying that, but that's what it is. Because love is, anyways, I keep hearing that, knowing. We have to let go of a lot of perspectives that we've built and step into that. And so that's why for those who have kind of lost everything, it's easier for you to get into that space of love, that heart space, because what do you have to lose?
Oh, well, there's that. Yeah.
We already are, yeah.
Well, when you lose it all, how do you rebuild? That's that's the hardest part. I mean, you called it, what does it mean to come out of the shadow? That you don't quite know what's in front of you. You go through that, it's big. And it's big. I think I told you when I was in the hospital in 2020, I had my hand on this book the whole time, the entire time. I'm laying in this hospital bed and never let this go. Now, why? It's a big question. But somehow it said to me, people like Mary Magdalene, whose human form was so destroyed in a way, who was so brilliant and so full of spirit, that but still the message still travels, the work still happens. I don't know what I'm saying, but there's something about, I just keep getting this image of being in that hospital bed, and I was feeling that last night too. It's and I think it's probably not unlike what you went through. That moment of it's like everything is just so empty. You don't know what's next. How do I go on? How do I keep going? What do I do? What's going to happen? You said all of a sudden everything that was all planned out, right? Your routine, everything that you were doing, oh yeah, I was going to go buy this, I was going to go study that, I was going to go teach this, I was going to go, it's like gone. It's just gone. And I think that's why I held so tightly to that book. It was like, everything's gone except this book. I still have this book. And then I started listening to it on audio, and I couldn't tell you what I was listening to, because I couldn't take it in.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that's the biggest part of that kind of awakening, that kind of, the wisdom isn't coming anytime soon. The path isn't becoming, no one's showing us the path.
No, because everything has been stripped from you.
That's why of course, what I just flashed on was how many times there are people, well-meaning people, who would say to me, why don't you do this? Why did you take chemo? So, well, they don't hand you a menu, that's the thing, there's no menu, you find out he's got brain cancer. There's no, now what? It's a total, and I think in a way that that's a pretty important moment. That's a really important moment when you realize, and I think you said this before, what you hold on to. What have you been holding on to? Where have you been? It's not there anymore. It's not there anymore.
Everything's been stripped. It's gone.
It's totally gone. And how do you?
And here,
I remember losing my temper,
Yeah.
Because I had so much PTSD afterwards, and I'm not prone to those things. So it was sort of, who's this? But I remember one time just not being able to make the bed. I was trying to put the sheets on, and my former partner was there and wasn't doing it, and I lost it. I just started yelling, and she got upset that I was being so mean. It wasn't personal. It was just the level of rage, but it's trying to find a way through that. That's the hardest stuff. You've described it to some extent, that it's there, it's in front of you, it's happened, it's over. Now what? Now fuck.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't ask for this. Why is this happening to me? What am I going to do? What, are you kidding? There's all of that process. And then, here I am. Here you are, years and years later, still going through stuff with it. And I'm going into my third year. And, this is like, wow, who would have thought this? And it's still there. It's still happening. It doesn't go away. It's still here. How do you make every day? Make sense of it?
And it's, again, it's not, we can't force it, because we'll fall back into that foxhole, or we'll fall back into that hole. It's one step at a time, one moment at a time. And I know that sounds really cliche, but when I'm listening to your story, Chrys, and I'm thinking of mine as well, we had to kind of surrender to the process, and and have faith that our feet were gonna hit the ground walking, or we're gonna continue to move forward, or however, acknowledging that, and accepting anything that we could be grateful for in that day, or that was, is that flower beautiful today? Because yesterday that flower was not beautiful. I couldn't even see it. Right. And so today, am I going to be able to see that flower today? Yes, I can see the flower. You know what I mean? So it's just like, and loving, that loving piece coming in. But yeah, one step at a time. But know that it is awakening. And on the other side of it,
whatever that means.
Whatever that means.
We haven't said the word about that yet, but
it's just
whatever that means. It's not knowing what the next minute will hold, and trusting that, and trusting yourself, and trusting that you'll be able to navigate that moment.
Navigate it.
So I walk outside and I fall down the driveway and break my shoulder, right? And I wasn't counting on that. That wasn't in the mix. And lying there in the driveway waiting for the ambulance to come, and saying to myself, oh, I literally was doing this. Oh, okay. There's another one. I wonder what this is going to bring. That kind of thing, and then one of the things that I've been laughing at myself about is that every time I go through something like that, I crack jokes with the healthcare workers. So they show up and I'm teasing them, and I'm yelling to the neighbor, I'm fine, don't worry about it. I'm taking care of everybody else. And in the moment, and the guy who's trying to put a needle in my hand and he can't find a vein, and I'm going, geez, what are you new at this? I'm teasing him, and I remember when I broke my back several years ago, the guy's taking me out on a stretcher. I said, you better not mess up my hair. And he's like, what? I said, come on, don't mess up my hair. It's raining out here, and they're laughing, I'm laughing, and I'm like, I've got a broken back and a broken arm, and I've got a broken shoulder, and I'm going, okay, but you learn about you. You learn about what you bring to the table, and how this works. There are people who can't go to that place of lifting that energy up. They can't. And there's certainly times I don't want to, but I'm always so mindful of what I'm creating in that same moment and what is making it worse. So, and being mean to other people is making it a lot worse. So I don't know. It's just, I think what I'm really describing is that it's a constant state of awareness. It's a constant state of awareness, because his death isn't going to go away. It's always going to be there.
Right.
So it's a constant state of awareness when part of that appears, part of that, you feel it. It's like you've been stroked somehow, where I didn't expect to feel that right now, and here it is. It's like, okay, now be with it. Okay, write it out. Now move to the next thing. It's you learn a lot about you. Yeah, you do. You learn a lot about you. And the word surrender keeps coming up in my mind. Me too. Yeah. It's a lot of surrender to the universal understanding that everything is much bigger than me. Yeah.
And however, I'm a part of that universe as well.
Yeah.
And that universal love. And so the takeaway today.
Here's our takeaway moment.
Takeaway.
Takeaway.
What
You're
is
not alone.
Pardon?
You're not alone.
Right. Takeaway, you are not alone. And so everybody, let's all say together, I am not alone. And I am connected, universal, to the universal love.
And it brings in things you never imagined would happen. You know, the synchronicities that appear are just amazing if you stay awake.
Mm-hmm.
You stay awake.
Stay awake.
You'll hear
Love
things.
that. Stay awake.
Whoa.
Stay awake, everyone.
Stay awake. Yep. If you stay awake. That was lovely. And I really am grateful that you shared your story.
Oh, thank you.
It's really, I learned a lot. That's good.
Thank you for guiding us through that. Guiding me through it, guiding.
Well, there's more to come.
There's more to come. So, yeah, I just feel like a big group hug. So I'm hugging everyone who's watching. Big group hug right now. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you in continuing this discussion in the comments and so forth. And yeah.
And we really want to hear your stories.
Yeah. Love
stories. Teach. The stories are our lessons. And I'm always reminded of that. And I think they're powerful tools. I think that's what I liked so much about what the isolation journal is doing, is it's bringing more stories, and we're bringing more stories, and the stories, keep us awake.
Yes. Let's stay awake.
Yes.
There's the takeaway. Let's stay awake. Love you, Chrys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie.
For another great discussion. And we'll see you all next time.